yes. Welcome to Not Ready for Season 6, the podcast in which we discuss the oft-maligned but interesting Season 6 of Saturday Night Live. I'm Thomas Sena. Joining me this and every week is the man who so rudely got passed over as Season 6 producer, Mr. Deremy Dove, my partner in crime, my co-host of Pop Culture 5. Here we are in a different setting, talking about Saturday Night Live. What's up, man?
Hey, how you doing, man? We made it. We're here talking SNL.
Yes.
Season 6, it's just exciting because we talked about this with Brad and Gary about them doing it and like, oh, you guys should keep it, but honored that they asked us to do it. And I think there's just so much to like unpack with this season and to look back on. And we know no matter what, it's an important season in the history of Saturday Night Live, but be interesting to just look at it with fresh eyes and see, is it unfairly ranked as an overall season,
Exactly, and it very well might be. I think there's with SNL, and this is why I'm excited about doing season 6. Like, I think with SNL, part of the fun for me of being an SNL fan is looking at not only like the classic sketches, your cowbells and things like that. Like, why, we know why those work. That's obvious. But a lot of the fun of being an SNL fan, I think, is exploring why something doesn't work, or seeing if something works better than you might think, or picking out the moments, like the moments of gold in certain things. That's part of the fun. To me, even like a bad sketch, that's a feature of this type of show, not a bug, Deremy.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree. That's what makes this show special, is that as a fan, they're from Monday evening on, they are really creating this show live for you Saturday night. And there is that like walking on a tightrope feel that when you're watching SNL, you know it better than me. You've been there live, but like it's that feeling of like, man, something special is happening, but it can go either way.
Sure.
And it just makes it awesome. And another thing for me is, I know you brought it up before, and I really do agree with you, like SNL and sports and that similarity. And I think that's what I'm looking at too, in a way, which is looking at season 6 and being like, man, was this a young team that, man, give them some time and they would have blossomed? Or, man, maybe even though it was a young team, maybe did it need to kind of trade off some pieces and cut some pieces and, start over? So I'm interested to see, like, with fresh eyes, like, how these cast members and writers of season 6 really look in our opinions.
Yeah, I've always loved the sports analogy for SNL, and you put it so perfectly. And that's how I am going to watch this. I watch every SNL season, even the current SNL season, season 50, that's just coming to an end now. Like, I just watched this season with through a sports lens. Like, oh yeah, Ashley Padilla, sophomore, came out swinging. It's her show now, sophomore year, second year. Here we go. She's on like a Victor Wembanyama trajectory as far as taking over the show and taking over the league. And that's why I've always loved the SNL sports analogy. And I'm excited about what we're doing here with season 6. So this week, we'll just be setting the table for what's coming up. We'll be talking about, how season 5 ended, what the show kind of morphed into when season 6 came along. And then after today's episode, we'll go episode by episode and just talk about, like, kind of break it down sketch by sketch. I like doing it that way, that format, so people can listen or follow along with us. Maybe go look up some old season 6 sketches, read about season 6 a little bit. Go check out One SNL a Day, the blog, which has a really good write-ups on every season, or almost every season. I think the poor person who was doing One SNL a Day during the Trump Baldwin era kind of got a little sick of it, or just a little exhausted, but especially with the earlier seasons. So if you want to follow along, I know I use One SNL a Day as like kind of a primary source for a lot of this. But Deremy, this is I haven't watched. I'm not even sure if I've watched any of these episodes like legit all the way through. I've seen clips, I've seen bits and pieces, whatever you could find, whatever's on Peacock. But we're going to be watching episodes sketch by sketch all the way through. I'm not
Right.
sure if I've done that for season 6.
I don't think I have. I know, I think years ago when Comedy Central was airing them, like I was getting like some edited kind of shortened down versions
Yeah.
of season 6, but definitely not sketch for sketch. And honestly, besides clips of things and certain like memories I have, it's been years. It's been probably over 20 years since I've really broken down this season. Now, like you said, read about it still, people giving opinions, watching certain sketches,
Mm-hmm.
out there and knowing who was on the show. Yeah, that's always stayed with me. But really giving it, because also we age and our eyes and our taste
Mm-hmm.
mature. So when I saw this, I was probably early high school when the last time I really looked at season 6. So as an adult now and close to middle age, I'll probably see things differently, and I understand the show differently and
Sure.
more layered than, even though I was a big fan as a kid. You still, as you get older and you see how it works, you understand and have more of an
Mm-hmm.
appreciation for how hard it is as a producer, the crew, writers, the cast. It's just really a tough job.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think to understand season 6 of SNL, I think we have to kind of close the book on season 5, which Brad and Dick Gary did a great job of doing
Absolutely.
that. But just to kind of reset, Deremy, I think it's safe to say that season 5 was SNL was running on fumes,
Yeah.
especially toward the end of season 5 there. I mean, after season 4, you had Aykroyd and Belushi leaving. You had a few new faces. You had almost kind of like it wasn't the same as the first 4 seasons. And I know you had Chevy leave, but then you had other people leave, and it was just sort of you could tell by the end the show was just kind of running on fumes, I think.
Yeah, I think due to surprise, because like, but you're right, Belushi and Aykroyd leave after season 4. I don't think the Belushi leaving was that much of a hit to Lorne and the show, just because John had his personal
Hmm.
struggles. He was kind of being difficult and hard to deal with. So I think that was okay for Lorne. But the surprise, and I think the timing was kind of tough too, was Dan Aykroyd leaving. And part of me wonders, Thomas, if just Belushi left and Aykroyd is around for season 5, how much better? I hate to put it all on one person,
Hmm.
but how much better season 5 would have been, because we know how versatile and brilliant Dan Aykroyd was for the show as a performer and a writer, and losing someone who can do both was really, in my opinion, costly for him.
Yeah, well, I think Dan Aykroyd was that good. To me, he
Yeah.
was like the MVP of the first 4 seasons. I think
Yes.
all the episodes that I would watch, Aykroyd was just that constant. Like he could do it all. He could lead a sketch. He could be the star of a sketch, but he could just kind of fill in the blanks wherever you need it. To me, Aykroyd was always like the cast member that stood out to me the first 4 seasons. And I agree with you. I think he would have added a ton to season 5. I think it would have ended after, or the original run. I guess the Lorne years would have still ended, but I think it would have ended with less of a sour taste, possibly for
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
people. I
Yeah, I
think.
think
I don't
so.
know. Like I said, it was just kind of running on fumes. Toward the end there, the writing was on the wall. People kind of figured Lorne wouldn't be back. The network wasn't in a hurry to bring Lorne back. So by the end of the season 5, the writing was on the wall. Buck Henry, in that last episode, said as much during his monologue. He's like, "This could very well be the last episode of Saturday Night Live ever." I don't know.
Yeah.
So everybody kind of knew where things were headed. So there was uncertainty in a lot of ways headed into season 6. And one of the first things they had to figure out if they were going to continue the show is who was going to lead.
Right.
And so I'm interested to have the discussion. We know that Jean Doumanian ultimately took over. Probably the main name that a lot of us kind of banty about, as far as this person would have, one, done a good job, and two, maybe had a realistic shot at it until he just sort of like was the responsible for his own undoing in a way, as Al Franken.
Yeah. I think Al would have been better than Gene in the fact that he is a comedy writer,
Mm-hmm.
and Gene didn't have that. I also think, as we've seen, and we have so much of a track record now to see whether it's Lorne or after Gene with Dick Ebersol, you need to be able to be that counselor, that like coach slash GM. And that means like as like the head coach, you need to be able to like motivate certain cast members or writers, know how to push them, know how to give them a pat on the back or maybe a kick in the butt. And also like in football or any other sport, if you're the coach or GM and you have like your owner, the boss, how to make them still feel good and make them, hey, yeah, we're growing. How to keep them at bay from maybe the star players and not ride them. And I don't think Al Franken at this time had that skill set, as we saw with the limo for Lamo sketch or weekend update bit that he did in the season 5.
But now get this. You know who gets complete door-to-door limousine service from NBC? Fred Silverman. Now, here's a guy who is a total, unequivocal failure. Okay, the guy's been here 2 years, and he hasn't done diddly squat. Okay, and he gets a limo. Now, here's a list, okay, of the top 10 rated shows this season in TV. Now, there's some A's there, some B's, some C's, some S's. You see those? You see any N's? No! Not one N. Why? Because Silverman is a lame-o. But he still gets limousine service. I like to call it a limo for the lame-o.
Yeah, he was a little more volatile back then.
Yeah.
I could see him possibly getting into a fist fight or wrestling match with Joe Piscopo or whoever the cast ended up being with him in charge. But I think you're right. I think he had the comedy mind. He was very set in his comedic principles. He knew his voice. He kind of knew probably what voice he wanted from the show. But I think just that leadership aspect, I agree with you, would have been different. I think from a leadership standpoint, one thing Al Franken would have had is, I think, respect from cast members as far as, oh, this is a person who we trust his comedic mind. He's been on the show. He has a comedian's values and perspective. He's a writer. With Jean Doumanian, I think that maybe that hurt her probably from the beginning is, you know, she was a associate producer. She was in charge mostly of booking like talent, guests, hosts, things like that. So she saw that, like, she was very, I think she knew the production side of it, but I think what hurt her is maybe not having that comedic writer's background. So if she did give feedback, maybe it would have been taken differently if she actually had a writer's background.
And I think what hurt her, because I believe it would have been hard, but she could have survived and done well. What hurt her, which you never know, like, you know, you hear multiple sides of a story, was the fact that Lorne apparently didn't like that she took the job and how she took the job. She says it wasn't her. I've read things where he said, like, well, she said, I just found out yesterday, but the other people were like, well, no, Gene was in the meeting 6 weeks ago. And Gene did not, and, you know, only those two really know the truth, or if it's somewhere in the middle. But I think with that perception then of all the people who were loyal to Lorne being like, Gene is the enemy, they weren't going to help her. They weren't going to stick around and, hey, you know, come during 1 week and I'll help you. We'll help write some sketches just because we want to, which you still see to this day, right, with people. Like, they just want to come back and join the fun. That wasn't happening because they were like, we're pro-Lorne. And then on the flip side, with Fred Silverman as the new president, which he did have great success at CBS and ABC, but had a big ego anyone knows Fred Silverman, had a very big ego, big personality. And I think a lot of stuff was taken out on Jean Doumanian because they were mad at Lorne, mad at Al Franken. So then her budget gets cut, and they're not as understanding and not as protective with the press from what I see with the show. So I think those two things where she was getting attacked from all angles, and it was just like, I don't know who could have really truly survived something like that.
Yeah, and we've discussed this before, and I was under the impression when I was younger with Jean Doumanian, I was under the impression that Jean didn't have any experience at SNL or in this world before. I thought she was just somebody who worked in the network, and then they just plucked and said, hey, now you're in charge of SNL. And she had no experience. And then I grew to learn as I got older over the years and reading more that, like, oh my gosh, Jean Doumanian worked at SNL like the first 5 seasons, and she had like a big role, and she was an associate producer. So she has more experience at SNL than I think people give her credit. So I don't think this should be like a bash Jean Doumanian kind of thing. And I know neither of us want to do that, but I do want to point out that she had more experience at SNL than I think most people realized.
Right. Yeah. I think we're not here to bash anyone because that is such a, like I said earlier, such a tough job for anyone, but replacing Lorne Michaels and coming in after that cast and that success that they had, I've heard Joe Piscopo say it was like they're the Beatles of comedy. And for those who, if you weren't around then or you don't know, you have to put yourself in like that mindset where these guys were rock stars on network TV, and like they were part of, at that point, the counterculture. They were what was cool. And that was going to be hard to, it's like, hey, we got 4 new guys for the Beatles. Like, that's how it was, like, back in like 1980. It was, replacing this original cast with, these names that 50 years later, Belushi, Aykroyd, Chevy, Gilda, they're still iconic. It was tough, and it was going to be hard for Bill Murray. It was going to be hard for anyone to come in there. So, yeah, we're not going to bash her. We're going to be real, though. If there's mistakes that we can see through episodes that she made, we're not going to, like, hold back and not say, yeah, I disagree with this decision, but we're going to be fair.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. She was basically starting from scratch. And there were a couple holdovers. Brian Doyle Murray was kind of a holdover. And oddly enough, Neil Levy was a holdover. He ended up being talent coordinator under Jean, which, I can see Jean liking kind of that stability, at least from like having Neil Levy, who's Lorne's cousin, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. So I thought that was interesting that Lorne's cousin stuck around as talent coordinator.
Well, because he was so young. I think as Lorne's assistant, when he got there in 75, he was like 14. So he's very young.
Like just a kid, yeah.
So part of me thinks, like, for Jean, it was like, I have no idea, right? But part of me is like, okay, it was to have that connection to Lorne. Neil knows the show. But part of me wonders, it's like, he's a young kid. I don't have to pay him a lot of money to go help out. Like, this 19-year-old kid here.
Oh, yeah. If you saw the Saturday Night movie and Neil Levy looked very young in the movie, it's because he was young in real life. He was very young. So he had a couple holdovers for Jean, but they're essentially starting from scratch. And so, you have your producer, you're kind of getting some people on board. You need to find a cast. So they ended up finding a cast headed into season 6, of course. Denny Dillon, who was a stage actress, actually appeared on the 3rd episode of SNL doing a routine called Talent Night at the convent. So she had like a nun's outfit on, and she had a little routine. So Denny Dillon, do you remember you seen Denny Dillon on certain things, Deremy?
I know she's the first, I believe, this person to say live from New York for like season 6. And then I know she has like a theater background. But other than that, I probably have to check if I've seen her in other things.
Did you ever watch Dream On HBO?
A little bit. I know of the show, but I didn't watch. Like, I've seen clips of it, really.
Yeah. So I think maybe that's like the credit that a lot of people know Denny Dillon for. I had a little Mandela effect, I guess, because I thought, and I was talking to Brad Robinson about this, and I'm like, oh yeah, Denny Dillon. I remember seeing her in the Police Academy movies. And Brad's like, she was in Police Academy. Like, no, I think so. And I looked up and I'm like, how? I swear Danny Dillon was in Police, but I guess she wasn't. So I think it was Dream On that I remember Danny.
And I
and of
think
course
it was
SNL clips and stuff.
sick, like Women in Prison, like a sitcom.
Okay.
Like it was on Fox where she's in like a uniform. So I think that might be it. But and then also I did see this too, that she was in Saturday Night Fever.
Yes.
And like was like one of the ladies who was obsessed with John Travolta, Tony, his character. And she says something, I don't know the line, but says something to him. So I do know that too. But definitely someone you're right. Looking back at it, I've seen around other places, but my strongest memory is seeing her and stuff for season 6.
Yeah. So she has a familiar face about her. So they got Danny Dillon. Somebody who would end up becoming a legend in the comedy world, but he wasn't quite how we became to know him as Gilbert Gottfried. Mm-hmm. So Gilbert was a stand-up comedian, became known, then got SNL, but people who know Gilbert and then go back and watch some of his stuff on SNL, it's pretty jarring. It was jarring for me as a kid to see Gilbert on SNL when they would show like condensed versions and be like, is that the same? That's the same guy?
Yeah. And rest in peace, Gilbert. Did become like a comedy like legend, later on. But I don't know if SNL was even Gilbert once you started seeing Gilbert's like comedic identity come through. Mm-hmm. I don't know if SNL is the place for Gilbert. I really don't. Maybe I'll change my mind watching these episodes, but I don't feel like, especially at that point, but even later on, I don't think it was a fit for him.
Right.
Like you would really have to use him specific and sparingly, I feel, to make it work.
Yeah.
So but a great comedy legend, one of the most known voices. I think so many people know that voice. Even
he literally found his voice.
Yes, because even if people don't know the name, that voice. Oh yeah, I know that guy. So Gilbert had one of the most recognizable voices, I think, in the past like 50 years in Hollywood.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to revisiting some of Gilbert's stuff.
Yeah,
on SNL, whatever he was able to get on, it's gonna be cool to see what Gilbert brought to the table. And then they found a singer, improviser, somebody who did a little stand up as well, Gail Mathias.
Yeah, Valley Girl.
So, yeah. So she actually thinks she had a couple of characters that seemed to kind of break through a little bit.
Yeah, she did. I think I'm very curious to watch her. She's someone I think I want to, like, going into this season, she's the person I'm looking at because I'm surprised, at least going in, that she didn't make the cut at the end of season 6 once Dick Ebersol comes in. Because she was kind of like a little bit of a breakout with her Valley Girl stuff, and she did some other impressions, but I really want to see, like, okay, maybe there's something we're missing, maybe something we didn't see, maybe she didn't fit what the direction they were going in, but I'm surprised of anyone else. She's the number one person I'm surprised didn't last with Eddie Murphy and Joe Piscopo. Yeah,
I could see that because she had pretty good character work. She was a good actress. She had like a acting, singing. She could sing a little bit.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, she had the look too.
Mm-hmm.
She had like a really good kind of star look, like really like a pretty woman. And so I think like just all that, like she seemed very talented. So I'm actually very curious to follow Gail Mathias's kind of path through the show and see if she got a raw deal at the end, you know?
I'm curious. She's the number one for me going into this. Like what?
Yeah, and then a guy that you just mentioned, somebody who I did an episode on the SNL Hall of Fame with the lovely Robin Duke was on with me, and we chatted about Joe Piscopo for like over an hour. Stand-up, radio DJ, actor, Joe Piscopo. So he and Eddie Murphy are the two from this cast that broke through. But man, I think Joe he does get credit amongst SNL nerds for being super talented, but man, Joe's was just an ultra talented sketch performer, and I'm glad people notice more and more over the years.
Yeah, and I heard people say that. I think Gary Kroger on something said like Joe Piscopo was just a working man's kind of comic, and I think I'm like that really is Joe. Like he has that like blue collar kind of sensibility that like those are the kind of guys who like Joe Piscopo's humor, and he's like, yeah, we feel comfortable with him. We know Joe, but very talented and known for that Sinatra impression and everything like that. But Joe was very key and was kind of that utility player that was needed. And I'm not going to compare to Aykroyd, like that's tough shoes to fill, but he was that utility player for this new, era of SNL that was, as we all know, is very important to any cast.
Yeah. Yeah, right. It's just like amazing character work. Piscopo, again, one of the holdovers that we would see move on past season 6. So I'm curious to see if Piscopo established himself early, if he became sort of a glue right away. I don't know these things, so I'm very curious about Joe here. Curious about someone else too who I don't know a lot about, Anne Risley. So she was an actor. She had a part in some Woody Allen movies, and she was friends with Woody Allen. She ended up doing stuff with Woody, like working with him in the '90s and stuff too. She was in Annie Hall. So, but I honestly don't know much about Anne Risley.
Me either. I mean, the rumor mill is Jean Doumanian was good friends with Woody Allen, and some people say Woody was helping her behind the scenes. Like that's rumored. I don't know how true that is. So it makes sense in a way that. No matter what, if Gene and Woody had a relationship, they were friends, so it makes sense if Woody would recommend her and stuff like that to the show. But I'm with you. I don't know much besides there's a Woody Allen connection. I don't know much about her either.
Yeah, the classic, we have the Groundlings, we have Second City, and we also have the classic Woody Allen to SNL pipeline.
Yeah.
That we're seeing with Anne Risley here. So,
which is bizarre in so many ways, but I mean, I hear you. If you're Jean Doumanian and you're friends with, no matter how you feel about Woody Allen personally, you can't take away his impact in comedy history through stand-up, through movies. So it makes sense to kind of lean on that person a little bit. Now, does she lean on that person too much? We'll see, but I don't know. Like I do get it.
Yeah, for sure. And the last of the repertory players. Someone who's infamous in SNL circles, and somebody who, as a kid, I recognized. I just didn't snap that it was him because he was in Dumb and Dumber. It's Charles Rocket.
Yes.
So musician, news anchor background. Charles Rocket had, I think he started off as the update guy.
Yeah.
So I think we'll see him do a lot of Weekend Update, obviously. And then, of course, the big finish that he went out in a blaze of glory. Charles
that
Rocket.
I've seen so many times.
Oh yeah,
that's probably the thing I've seen the most from season 6, and that's probably the only episode I'm like, yeah. In recent times, I saw start to finish was that one, and he winds up being the fall guy for a lot of stuff here, and I'm interested when we get to that episode of it. I mean, he did it. He said the F word, so it's not like, but a part of me, and I've heard people say this, if the show had success, would they have let it go or just gave him like a smaller trouble? He got in trouble on a smaller level, I would say.
Exactly, yeah.
But I don't know. I'm not sure because 1981, you doing that's kind of rough.
Exactly. I'll never forget when he said that, the look specifically on Eddie Murphy's face. He's just like, ooh.
Yeah, he's like, ooh.
Yeah, I don't know.
He made that face.
That. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, okay. He's like, it's late, but it's not that late.
Exactly. Yeah. I think the network, honestly, might have been relieved. They might have actually been kind of happy that Charles Rocket said that.
I think so. We'll get into it during the show, but there were some unexpected breaks that they got toward the end of season 6 that really helped the show out a lot in the future.
True, exactly. So those were the repertory players: Denny Dillon, Gilbert Gottfried, Gail Mathias, Joe Piscopo, Anne Risley, and Charles Rocket. And we got ourselves some feature players too, Deremy. So somebody who was actually somewhat of a utility performer from seasons 3 to 5, so who had been on the show, had lines on the show whenever they needed, quite frankly, if they needed a black woman,
Yeah.
they would ask Yvonne Hudson to come on, who worked in the building.
About to
So
say,
was,
yeah.
Yeah, she was around and stuff. But somebody with some SNL experience, Yvonne Hudson.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's an interesting but cool story, like going from like an NBC page and working in the building to then filling in to then becoming a, part of SNL. Like, now maybe under better circumstances, she probably would have wanted to be a part of it, not a part of this cast that was, you know, crucified by the media. But it's like to go from a few years earlier, you're just working in the building to being on the hottest show on television. That's a pretty cool story that no matter what, you can always tell people like, I was on SNL. I was part of the cast.
For sure.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and then we get to see her actually credited because they never credited her in seasons 3 through 5. But
Yeah.
It's really neat that they brought Yvonne Hudson along. And a couple other ones that they start in December, and I don't really know much about them. We'll see if they go the way of other storied feature players, as like Rowena Banks and Morwana Banks and John Milheiser, and people like that. Matthew Lawrence and Patrick Weathers. I honestly got nothing. Matthew Lawrence, theater actor. Patrick Weathers is a musician.
Nope, I don't have much on them either. So interesting to see if they shine through here too.
Yeah. Or if they're just like one of a lot of, or two of a lot of featured players that just sort of like came and went.
Yeah, right. That'll be interesting to see, because wouldn't it suck if like we see some potential talent in these featured players and we're like, oh, Gene, you had it right there.
Right.
Like you just let it go, which I'm not sure if it is like that or not, but it'll be curious and fun to kind of see. Maybe there's someone that catches your eye, Thomas, or mine, that we're like, they had something here.
I might turn into a big Matthew Lawrence apologist.
Right.
Yeah, we'll see.
I might be right there with you.
Yeah. The next person doesn't need an apologist for him, and of course I saved him for last. Featured player who would make his debut in November. It'd be Eddie Murphy, man. So I know how much Eddie Murphy. I love Eddie Murphy. But it's just like, I want to get your quick thoughts on this guy.
This is a Mount Rushmore cast member, arguably the greatest of all time in SNL history still. I think when it comes to most important cast members, I think he's number one in my opinion for a lot of different reasons. But Neil, you mentioned Neil Levy earlier, Lauren's cousin. That's how Eddie got on the show. Gene really had Robert Townsend, who's terrific stand-up comic, filmmaker, actor, has had a heck of a career too, but pegged him as that, like, oh, we need a black cast member, like the way like Garrett Morris was for the first 5 years. So Gene had Robert Townsend in mind, and Eddie would call up Neil and would give different stories about, I got 18 brothers and sisters, I need this gig, I need this job. So it made Neil laugh. So Neil said, I'll set up an audition for you, just to be like, he thought like an extra or something, but saw Eddie and saw this talent and was like to Gene and everybody, we got to hire this guy. And that is something I'm interested in too, because the rumor mill and the mythology is that Eddie was on for this Jean Doumanian year, but that it was Dick Ebersol who like really made him a star.
Right.
And part of me wants to see, is that true, or was like, would Gene have gotten there anyway? Was Eddie getting enough reps and Gene was going to get there anyway if she would have stayed on for season 7? Eddie was going to be the star. That's probably my number one question going into us doing these rewatches is, was it Dick Ebersol making like talented, like, having that talent evaluator eye to be like, yeah, this guy, or it was kind of set up for him?
He was just headed there anyway.
Yeah, I'm curious because Eddie appeared, from seeing some of the numbers, he appeared more frequently in this season and earlier on than I thought he did.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, like, no, and Dick Ebersol gets a lot of credit, and like he definitely did make Eddie and Joe the 2 stars, but was it already going that way maybe? And just, it's sad that Gene didn't get a chance to really push them and take it to the next level.
Yeah, that's why I'm interested, especially episodes 9, 10, 11, 12, like toward the end, to see what kind of momentum Eddie may or may not have had toward the
Right.
end of that season.
Right, absolutely. And I think it's just, I mean, I'm pretty sure he was 19 years
Oh
old
yeah,
at this point
19.
when the
Mm-hmm.
show started. I think probably somewhere in 81, I think his birthday was in April, he turned 20. But to be 19, I think that's what's insane is for the great cast members afterwards and even before. I think Aykroyd was 23 or 24, which is young still, but to be maybe a year and a half out of high school and you're on Saturday Night Live
Yeah.
and to ooze that confidence the way he did and was just like the moment this moment isn't too big for me. I'm bigger than the moment. It's just unbelievable to me when you hear stories or you watch him, like it's like he just knew he had it. And I'm always like, when I see anything, like you said, I love Eddie. I'm obsessed with Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
The big thing I take away is I wish I was that confident in myself in any aspect of my life. I wish I was like,
Right.
hey, I know I got it. So it's just unbelievable to see this, man. I'm so pumped to see him.
Oh yeah, likewise. And I love how he basically was like hounded Neil Levy to until he got an audition, and Jean says that she liked him. I don't know if that's just her saying that after the fact, because what else are you gonna say? But she said that she liked him, but she didn't have necessarily the budget to hire another black cast member. NBC wasn't gonna let her do that. But she claims that she always saw something in Eddie, but she just didn't have it in the budget.
Which could be true.
Could be.
But also on the flip side, it's hard to look past Eddie and not see him as the biggest star to emerge from SNL, just like how iconic he's become. And there's a show that's had a lot of comedy legends, but I think Eddie's the biggest one.
Mm-hmm.
So that's extra egg on your face if you're Gene to already, sadly get fired during season 6, not even last a full season. And then it was like, oh, you missed the biggest comedy talent we've ever had on the show right in front of your face, and you were just like oblivious. Yeah. I think like I wouldn't want that reputation either. So not saying she's not telling the truth, but I could see it being the flip side of like, hey, I don't want to look bad and be like,
right.
You didn't see Eddie Murphy. He was right in your face. Like,
that's why
that's rough.
Yeah, like if I'm the Portland Trailblazers GM from 1984, I'm telling everybody I wanted to draft Jordan.
Exactly.
Ownership said no. We need a big man. Take the Kentucky kid. But I wanted to draft Jordan.
You know what's funny? Because knowing you, being friends with you, hopefully I'm seen this way. You're a straight up honest person, right? And you believe, and I respect that about you. But it's like I could even see you if you were in like the Portland situation, or you're like with Gene with Eddie Murphy. You're like, no, I thought Thomas said he didn't want Eddie Murphy. No, I wanted Eddie Murphy. I saw it. It was that guy. They over there didn't want him. Yeah. I wanted Eddie.
I am distancing myself from that bad decision with a quickness.
Oh, yeah.
I'm the guy who spotted Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, because those are kind of the decisions that are like, I don't even know who the GM for Portland was. And we know Gene, like, it's hard to get a job after like that. Like, it's like, you passed on Michael Jordan. You passed on Eddie Murphy. It's like, people will be like, what? Like, so I don't blame Gene. If it's not true, I still wouldn't knock her for trying to cover it up because, who wants that reputation?
Yeah. Stu Inman. Shout out Stu Inman.
Stu.
Yeah, for drafting Sam Bowie over Michael Jordan. After this, I'm gonna look up to see if Stu Inman's on record as saying that he wanted to draft Jordan.
No, he's gotta be. Gotta be.
Yeah.
And I can't blame Stu either, right?
Yeah.
And that's a great comparison because I think Eddie Murphy is the Michael Jordan of comedy. So you passed, potentially, maybe passed on the Michael Jordan of comedy and was right in front of you. Right there.
Yeah, so we'll see what Eddie put on tape in season 6. I'm curious to find that out. So we got our cast. The writers' room was interesting because there were 21 writers that came and went. I think there were 21 maybe that started off.
Yeah.
And that feels like a lot, Deremy. I don't know.
Yeah.
If you had a writers' room, would you want to condense it a little bit?
I would, but I can see at that point if you're new to it, you need that's who you're leaning on, really.
Yeah.
I think, and like to you, what you said earlier, Gene being a part of the show in the production those first 5 years, and if anyone knows SNL, Lorne sees it as a writer's show. Like, he respects the cast, values that, but he sees it as a writer's show. And Lorne being a former writer, so I think even if you're not one, the writing is important. You need people who can write these sketches, but what's going to work, what's not going to work. So then sometimes it's not the right approach, in my opinion, but you're just like, let's see who sticks and what sticks.
Right.
So fine, we'll hire them all.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So they hired a guy named Mason Williams. He was the first head writer. He had worked on the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour as a writer. Apparently he had a
singer.
He was a musician, singer, did some stand-up. Apparently he had a big voice in the room for the Smothers Brothers stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like so he did have some writing credentials that may have lent themselves to this job as head writer. Clashed with Jean Doumanian, apparently. So our guy Mason Williams lasted 5 episodes. Deremy.
Yeah.
And, Jeremy Stevens. Did you have anything on
that
Mason
song,
Williams?
Oh, Classical Gas is I'm sure if you hear it, you know the song?
I think
if you hear it, it's such a great jam. That's why it always makes me laugh, because I love that song. I remember hearing it as a kid. I didn't know Mason Williams for years. To find out it's the same guy who was with the Smothers Brothers and SNL, it's like, that's an interesting life to have.
Yeah, and I think he wanted SNL to be more of like a hard-hitting cultural examination and counterculture, like we had mentioned before, like counterculture stuff. Like, he wanted it to be maybe a little more edgy as far as cultural stuff. Like the Smothers Brothers, like that was kind of their perspective. They weren't afraid to be a little edgy and on examining culture, commenting on culture and stuff. And I think Mason Williams wanted the show to be more like that. And he's made comments I've seen where he's like, people were there and they just wanted it to be a stepping stone. They just wanted it to, launch them into somewhere else. And I think maybe he didn't like that sensibility, and he and Gene clashed. And so he was gone after 5 episodes. Jeremy Stevens and Tom Moore took over for Mason Williams. And then Michael O'Donoghue, I think the last episode. Michael O'Donoghue came in.
Yeah, he comes back as well. I think he comes back. That's when Gene's gone. And Dick Ebersol had come back in, and Dick Ebersol made, that phone call to Lorne, making sure he has the blessing. And I think it was smart on Dick's part. That way you could get more people to come back in. But apparently what I heard from Dick, and I've heard Lorne say this, is Lorne recommended Michael O'Donoghue, and it'll send a good message to other people who were a part of that original cast. And, Michael O'Donoghue, really what it was, I believe, is he needed a job. And so Lorne was trying to look out for his guy. But Michael O'Donoghue didn't get along with too many people. And you're not going to get more different personalities than Dick Ebersol and Michael O'Donoghue. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the only person for this cast who he respected was Eddie Murphy, because he's like, Murphy's not afraid of me, or something like that. But Michael O'Donoghue, was really trying to just tear this, be his self-destructive self, and tear this show down when he came on board.
Exactly. Yeah. So, his was for the last episode. That was episode 13. Some like notable people in the writers' room. Like I'd mentioned Brian Doyle Murray, who had been a holdover from previous seasons. I wonder if they seriously considered him for head writer.
Yeah, he's known by just being Bill's brother, but has had a heck of a career. Mm-hmm. And if people don't know him, if you Google him and see his face, you'd be like, oh, he's a classic that guy.
Oh, completely.
You know, Brian Doyle Murray.
Yeah.
And it looks like Bill, too.
Yeah.
Like, and stuff like that. But very funny, you know, in everything I see. And I think has a good head on his shoulders and a good, like, mind. And I think probably over Mason Williams and Michael O'Donoghue would have been better as head writer than you know, you couldn't have done worse than those selections. So I think they should have given him at least serious consideration for it.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, Terry Sweeney was a writer. He would end up becoming a cast member. I think the first openly gay cast member in SNL history.
Yes.
Terry Sweeney, the first Lorne year. When he came back, Terry Sweeney was on the cast. So,
or the weird year, as we know it now. The documentary.
Oh yeah, that good Lorne documentary that came out. Yeah, they focused a lot on that on season 11, and Terry Sweeney was part of that cast, and he was in the writers' room here for season 6. Something that I just found out. I don't know. I didn't snap to this. The co-writers of Coming to America were writers on this.
Oh yeah, Barry and David.
That's
where Eddie met them, and they wrote for Eddie they were with Eddie for a lot. Yeah, that great triumvirate comes from this season, and Barry Blaustein is more Northeast kind of humor. David Sheffield's from down south, and they connected with Eddie, and the three of them, if you hear like in that great run with Dick Ebersol, it's the three of them are like that brain trust of like a lot of the classic Eddie Murphy sketches. So when you get to Coming to America and everything else, those were Eddie's guys, and they wound up having a long career.
Yeah,
you know, from what I hear them say is that they kind of kept out of the gossip of this season and kind of stayed to themselves, and I think showed, and we'll see in certain moments with Eddie, they were a part of that. So I think that also is one of the ways that they were able to stick out. But those are the guys. Yeah, there's 3 writers. Well, there's a few writers I know, but I know really well the 3 who wind up staying, really, or like 4, but like the 3 who stay once Ebersol comes in, and these 2 are some of those. And I'm grateful because they were part of some of the great moments of my life of being a comedy fan, from SNL to Coming to America and other movies. So yeah, those are 2 guys I know real well.
And we're big wrestling fans. Barry directed Beyond the Mat.
Yes.
As well.
Yes. Yeah. I know you know Bruce Pritchard, Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard's podcast, and the episode where he talks about Beyond the Mat, because he didn't like how it was done. It was an expose on the business. Bruce does not speak to kindly about Barry.
Yeah.
But it's kind of funny, but because I'm like, I know that guy. I'm like, yeah, I know Barry, but Beyond the Mat's a heck of a documentary. I like it. But,
I thought it was great, but I can see if you're, especially in 99, they're a lot more open about the business now.
Right.
Especially in 99, I could imagine not loving a documentary like that quote unquote exposes a lot of the behind the scenes of the business.
They were not fans.
No, and I thought Barry did a great job. So
me too.
Yeah, Barry and David, Brian Doyle Murray, Terry Sweeney, and a whole host of other writers lending their voices to season 6 here. Yeah. So in any, as we wrap up and then look ahead, any storylines? Like, what are your kind of biggest? What are you looking forward to for season 6?
Yeah, I think the storylines I want to see are, how it looked different than the first, you can go to season 5, but really the first 5 years, how it looked visually, how they approached it. One thing I think you kind of hear about with the first 5 years, but people don't stress enough, is there's things that you can't control. So in 1975, if you want to be rebellious, it's very few times in like the 20th century into now that's the time where Watergate is fresh, Vietnam is just ending, all these things, the hippie movement, the feminist movement, all these things are still fresh to people. And even in like the culture, like Jaws comes out in 75, like you can't pick that, you're not going to know that. And then it's like, well, in 1980 it's like, ugh. It's not, 5 years later, but it's not as hot as 75. And I'm like, that's kind of tough. Like, what how they show, because SNL, we know, reflects the times, and it's like you can't control the times. I don't think they had as hot material to work with like the first 5 years. So interested to see how they reflect that, really last year Jimmy Carter, but Reagan starting. Like, I'm curious.
Yeah, you're right. And then when I think about a lot of the down years of SNL, I think it does coincide with just weird times in culture and in pop culture. Because I think like some down years that a lot of people don't talk about are like the years immediately after Will Ferrell, especially around 2003 and 4. Those were some bad SNL years, but it was weird. I contend that 2003 and 4 were like the weirdest years in culture and pop culture, like maybe of my life. And I think the same case could be said here.
You need stuff for this show. Don't get me wrong, that's not the only thing, but you need to have things going on in the culture. That's what makes it great. I mean, we all know the stories about, it's 11:15 and some breaking news happens and they have to change the cold open because something changed in like the real world, So it's like, that's tough, where I look at like the early 80s and it's not as juicy as like the first 5 years, where it's like, man, there's a plethora of stuff to pick from than just spoof. And I'm like, 1980, who shot JR? I'm like,
they
tried that. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, it's not as sexy.
Yeah.
And that was a phenomenon, who shot JR. It was huge everywhere, but I'm like, that's really tough too, which I'm like, man, that's tough for Gene and the writers and producers as well to kind of overcome.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how they try to comment on what's happening in the culture. And I'm just curious from an overall writing perspective, just to see if there were any premises that I thought like this has potential, but tweaks here and there, just to see like the if I can gauge any sort of like voice coming from the writer's room, to see if there's anything that had potential. I'm just curious overall to see if this season 6 does get too much of a bad reputation.
Absolutely. I'm curious of that too, because I know it's hard for people to imagine, because it's just become used to like, okay, NBC or Lorne and the producer, they're cleaning house and a new cast is coming. You have to take yourself back to the spring of 1980, where you didn't know, as Thomas said earlier, if SNL was going to exist. This was the first time we had a new cast. So I guess I can be fair to even some of the critics back then, which was like, we're now accustomed to, as fans, as podcasters, as critics, hey, this is a new cast, a new group of writers. Give them some time to cook. I don't think in 1980, 81, the critics and all were like, time to cook. Like, this is still a newish show. It's season 6. What do you mean? You cooked those previous 5 years. Let's go here. And I'm like, man, were they cooking? If we look from the first episode to like episode 8, 9, 10, and we're like, it's clicking together. And just like I said earlier, timing wasn't on their side. They were really trailblazers in a lot of ways. And a lot of times when you're a trailblazer, you take the lumps so that the people after you can kind of soar. And that's what I feel like this was, but we'll see. I could be off, but that's what I'm curious to see also going into this.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And I'm curious to see which cast member or cast members I kind of like take ownership of.
Yeah.
Which cast members I'm like, if only they were in a different era, or if only they had better writing, or if only like I see something. So I'm curious to see which cast member emerges as like mine from season 6.
Yeah, I am too. That's a good point. I am too. Like, man, which will stink. I mean, I know, hey, things happen for a reason, but as much as it is talent and all that stuff, a lot of times things are timing, and it's out of your control. Where, man, like you said, I believe we'll see probably at least one cast member where it's like, man, they were around 5 years later, they were around 6 years later.
Yeah.
It would have been different for
they
them.
had Dana and Phil to play off of.
Right. You know what else I'm curious about? And we both talked before we recorded about, we just saw the new Lorne documentary that Morgan Neville directed. And there's been talks even before a documentary about, is Lorne going to retire? when, if Lorne leaves, what happens. And I'm curious to kind of see, in a way, watching this season without Lorne, the first without Lorne Michaels, if, man, will the network make the same mistakes they made in season 6 in the upcoming, whenever that time does, which hopefully I don't have to see it happen, but it will eventually, all things come to an end. Are they going to learn from what they did in season 6? Or are they going to do the same thing when Lorne leaves? Like, that's what I'm kind of curious. I feel the network had a big part in this as well that some people don't talk about. And I'm just like, man, I can see them. Maybe I'm crazy, Thomas. I'm like, I can see some fools doing the same thing when Lorne leaves. Like, in present time, they're going to, hey, we'll cut the budget. And no, this show's way too expensive. And I'm going to give
Lorne
my
has
try.
That fear too.
From the movie, you're right. Yeah, he wants to protect it.
Mm-hmm.
And he's probably the only one who really can.
Yeah.
And I think it's even more so now, 50 years later, but it was the same in a way back then. He was the only one who really got it. And I think that's, whether it was Gene or it was Franken and Davis or whoever, they were going to suffer because they didn't have someone who could protect it.
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of cool storylines, I think, headed into this season that Deremy and I are really excited to talk about. So y'all join us. And the next time you hear us, we're going to be talking about season 6, episode 1, your host, Elliot Gould, musical guest, Kid Creole, and the Coconuts. Deremy, Elliot Gould, a familiar face. So we're talking about all this change and stuff. And then Elliot Gould, who we saw host a lot in the first 5 seasons.
So going into it, now we'll see how the episode looks, but that's a good start by Gene. Get a established host who has been successful, a popular host from the first 5 years. So already, without watching it, I'm like, that's one positive thing that Gene was doing. Like, she got Elliot to come back and host. We'll see how the episode looks when we do our rewatch, but hey, I feel like her thinking was in the right direction, at least.
Yeah, I'm with you. So see you then, buddy.
All right, see you.
Thanks for listening to the Not Ready for Primetime Project. Be sure to subscribe and follow wherever you listen to our podcast. You can also follow us on social media everywhere at NR4PT Project. Thanks for listening. Good night and have a pleasant tomorrow.